Hi, my name is Kat Gridko, and I am the resident photographer from beautiful Cape Town, South Africa. And today we are talking about post-production, and I'm going to talk you through a few points that you should be aware of when you are planning and executing your shoots. So the first thing is that you have complete control over your concept. So that is everything from when you come up with your idea to the execution of the whole shoot and everything that that involves, and the post-production of your final images. You want to put a lot of effort into your concept, your finding of your models, the right people for the right concepts make a big difference, your styling, your props, your posing during the shoot, your image selection after the shoot, and then your post-production, which is probably one of the biggest parts, just to make sure that everything looks polished and just right. You also want to think about what story you want to tell overall, because if you look at your styling and your choice of clothing, whether that is your clothing or your props, you want to make sure that you are very conscious about the colors that you're choosing, the textures that you're choosing, how much you're deciding to have in the background lying around. You don't want too many things that are too distracting in the images. So you need to be very conscious of how much you are putting in and how much you are taking out of each scene in your photographs. You also want to make sure that those images are as clean as possible. So if you do see, something random in the corner over there that you don't necessarily want in, you don't want to be in that mindset of, oh, I can just remove it in post. Because sure, that's easy enough to do on 1 or 2 photos, but when it comes to 10, 20, 50, 100 photos, and when you're doing that consistently, which stock usually is, the more that you submit, the better your chances are at making more money through those images. You definitely do not want to be working on hundreds and thousands of images where your mindset is, oh, we can just remove it later on. So be very aware of that when you are actually shooting. So you can see in this image here of the lady shot from the back with that bright yellow against her beautiful skin tone and the blue of that dress, and then the silver of the background and those lines, which are so different to the textures of her hair and everything else that's in the image, that really draws you in and makes you want to look at it for longer, and really makes you just stop and think and go, okay, what is the story that's being told here? So you want to be very conscious of all of those aspects, which then come together to create that story and that visual interest for anyone that's going to be looking at the image, whether that is a potential buyer or once they do buy it and use it in an ad or anywhere where any people will see it. You want them to stop and go, oh, what's this about? So yeah, you want to put as much effort into all of those pieces of the process as possible and be very conscious about it. And in doing that, you want to be a very good communicator. Everything from your team, whether that's a makeup artist or if you happen to use a stylist, whether that's props or clothes, or any other aspect of the shoot, like your models or anything else that you could possibly use, or anyone else you could possibly use on the shoot. You just want to be as upfront about everything as possible so that everyone's on the same page, which will then make the images at the end of the shoot exactly what you want, and they'll be those show-stopping images. So however much effort you put in on the initial stages and throughout it will definitely show in the final images. That was visible in this shoot that I did with a mother and daughter, and I could just tell from the moment that I initially met the mom and the daughter was there while we were shooting, that connection that they had. I was like, I definitely have to come back here and do a shoot with them as a mother and daughter, because they have such an amazing connection. And it was everything from pre-planning the shoot to sending them a mood board to telling them what I wanted to do and the concept, and chatting to them about their clothes. And if we were going to be using any props, obviously knew I wanted to include a lot of technology. So I asked them about laptops, and those are my headphones that I brought. So you can bring some of your props, use what they have, and see how much you've got so that you can alternate between all of the props and then get lots of different images with the same people, which can be used in different ways and by different people and companies. And out of these two, I got such great images from this shoot and basically any shoot that I've done with them, because I just make sure that I communicate it all with them beforehand, and I also let them have some input if they have any ideas. It's really good just to sort of bounce that off of them and ask them if they have any ideas, And if they do, then you include that in the shoot, and then that helps them feel more part of it and excited about it, which is really cool. Number 2 that you want to focus on is your post-production, which is one of the most important things. So you want to basically make sure that you color correct and exposure correct your images. You don't want to do too much more than that. So what I mean by color correction is you want to watch your white balance. So some cameras shoot more green, some cameras shoot more blue. So some are colder, some are warmer, some are more orangey. So you just want to make sure that the photo is looking to your eye on the laptop or computer how you want it to look as a final image, basically. And you don't want to over edit. You just want to make sure that your exposure is right and that those colors are right. Just like this beautiful picture of this lady smiling, the colors are just perfect. The lighting is amazing, which makes her skin look beautiful, and the clothes look great. So that's what you want to focus on when you are doing your post-production and when you're shooting, and have that in mind. So you also want to make sure that you have straight lines, like in this image of the stairs. Those are mostly straight. They're a little bit skewy, a little bit OCD though. But yeah, I use the tool in Capture One, and there's one in Lightroom as well, where you can straighten your lines and you can just straighten them up perfectly. So just make sure in each image that that's the case, because then it's not distracting if things are a little bit off. So whether that is something like stairs or a horizon line or anything with lines, basically buildings, I always go in every photo and straighten it up, which takes a bit of time, but it definitely makes the images stand out. And everyone tells me that my images are so clean, and they like can't put their finger on it, but there's something about the images, and I think it's largely to do with that, because there aren't any distracting like wobbly lines, you know. So yes, on your images, you want to avoid filters and color grades, because as soon as you do that, your client or the potential company that buys images may have their own color grade or sort of, you know, rules of the coloring that they want to add over a photo. So if you've already added something that's too contrasting or too dark or too blue or too green or whatever the case is, they won't be able to undo that once they buy the images to then put their look and feel on top of it. So you do want to keep that editing as neutral as possible, so that they can basically get it and then add their little bit of pop or shine or whatever it is that they need to add on top of the image to make it fit in with the rest of their advertising. Number 3 is composition. So you want to make sure that you shoot both portrait and landscape orientation, because then that gives people options. Like sometimes you might go to a bank and they'll have a portrait ad behind one of the tellers, and then they want images that are portrait, but then they also might want one in another part of the bank where it's landscape, because they've got more wall to do. So it's always great just to give those options, because then that's potential for people to possibly buy more pictures from you. So always have that in mind. I always try and do portrait and landscape. And in shooting like that, you always want to try and remember negative space. Whether that's left-hand side, right-hand side, top, bottom, whatever it is, you can shoot a couple different options. And in doing that, you then allow them to decide which one they want and where they would want to put, whether it's text or a logo or anything over the image, so that they don't then put that over people or faces or something like that. So you always want to keep that negative space in mind. Just like in this picture here with the son, with the daughter and the father, which is really cute. I love her hair. And yeah, you can see that negative space on the right-hand side, and it works really nicely for a logo or some text to be put over that. So keep that in mind. And number 4 is your logos and trademarks. You want to avoid logos and anything with trademark issues on anything that you use in shoots, whether that's a prop or clothing. If it is completely unavoidable, you want to make sure that it's easy to remove. Say on a Mac laptop like the one I'm using now, if I use it in a shoot, it's easy enough to go in and just Photoshop out that little Apple sign, or if it's a PC, the Mercer, whatever on the front, you can take that out easily enough. But just make sure if your model is holding the laptop or an iPad or a phone or something, that when they're holding it, you don't want to be holding over the logo, because then that's going to be way more difficult to remove. If you make sure that they hold just a little bit above the logo and you can see the whole thing, then that's easier to go in and just brush out with your, I think it's the healing brush, that you then just go and remove, which is easy enough. So just keep an eye on that when you're shooting. And You can see that in this image of this woman with her bright pink top, which I love, with this color scheme. It's all very dark, and then she just pops, which is fantastic. You can see that they've removed the logo from the laptop, which is easy and exactly what you want to do. But when it comes to, say, 20 or 50 or 100 images, you don't want to go and be removing it on every image. So a thing that I learned which helps is then you can get a sticker which is the color of whatever device or anything that you're using where you don't want the logo showing. Say for my Mac, you would get a silver sticker, put it over that logo, and you won't see it when you shoot. And then you don't need to go and remove it in a whole bunch of images, which is great. And yeah, you want to avoid things like trademarks, which a good example is the Adidas 3 stripes, which people don't think about. It's not like a logo on a shirt or something, but those 3 stripes are very noticeable and everyone knows that that is Adidas. So you want to avoid that as well, because if you do a shoot with that and someone's wearing pants with it, you're going to have to go in and remove it in every photo, or those photos may not be usable if it's very obvious. So yeah,